the what's the name?
The Greenwich Muse.
The Greenwich Muse. The Greenwich Muse. It so happened the Greenwich Muse had entertained and made use of a number of people from the American Negro Theater. And as a result, it was eventually picked up to be staged. William Marshall was an actor who had been very fortunate. He came from Indiana, Gary, Indiana. His father was a minister, as was my father, by the way. And he had uncharacteristically gotten a number of jobs in the theater, which were surprising for that era, and to some extent would be surprising even today. He understudied Boris Karloff in a production on Broadway at one point. He then did did the lead in a movie about Haiti, a small budget movie about Haiti in Hollywood, followed by co-starring in a large budget movie called Demetrius and the Gladiators. As a result of that, Universal Studios commissioned someone to write a motion picture in which he was to star. So he was in New York. He did the lead, DeLord, in a revival of Green Pastures, and then he's waiting for the movie in Hollywood. A television production, rather. These are early days. There were no color. There were very few stations, just the main stations. And one of the stations in New York came up with the idea of doing a show about a black detective in Harlem. And they named it Harlem Detective. Well, the person they hired at first did not work out very well. And as a result, each week, for a number of weeks, they had different black actors trying out as the lead in Harlem Detective. Since Marshall was waiting for this movie to begin on the coast, he was contacted and he became the Harlem Detective during 1 week. Well, the chief television critic of the time for the New York Times saw that particular episode and wrote a review in the Times that could only be described as a money review, saying with a little more time, a little more money, this could be network fare. Well, obviously the producers were elated and they were all ready to go, but out comes an issue of the
Red Channels.
The ragtag, you might say, publication called Red Channels, with a front page story on the background of William Marshall, citing he had sung for this group, he had appeared at this place, he had greeted Paul Robeson at another place, things of that sort. Well, that spelled the end of the Hollywood movie. And Marshall found himself unable to work. Now, I had previously shown him a script of the historical drama, of which he said, well, this is interesting, but I'm doing this movie out in Hollywood, so I will be available. But he now suddenly showed interest in seeing the script again, especially after the Greenwich Music Theater had optioned it. So he signed on, and he became he did the role of Frederick Douglass. In rehearsal, at one particular point, there had been not an argument, but a disagreement between myself and the director as to how the first act should end. And Marshall, rather than waiting to see how this was to be resolved, stepped out front during a rehearsal at one point and said, "Now this is as far as I will be able to go with this act. The rest is unplayable." I considered that a personal affront. Decided that there would be some way to get back with him. I had been asked to sit in at rehearsals and particularly take note of the idiom in which the actors were speaking. The idiom at the time, among many actors, was the Marlon Brando kind of swallowing words and things of that sort. Whereas the speech for this particular period had to be far different from that, much more precise. So I was to make notes and give those notes to the director. The director, of course, would give them to the actors. But this particular night, I decided I would give the notes directly to the actors. And when it came to Marshall, I made some sort of comment that was intended, in effect, to get back at Marshall. Next thing I knew, Marshall was jumped up from his seat and came over to where I was sitting in the audience and shook his finger in my face, saying, "Now, if you have any further comments for me, you give them to the director." And I said, "Get your finger." Whereupon he became enraged. He was a huge man. I was even smaller than I am now. And he grabbed me, he picked me up and threw me over 3 or 4 rows and then jumped on me. Well, Maxwell Glanville and a number of others who were involved with the production pulled him off of me. And,
that's the story I thought was in Anna Costa, but it wasn't.
No, it wasn't. Okay. It was in Splendid Era.
Yeah. Right. So what I had, and Benny had said, we had to leave this for at least 3 or 4 questions and end it because there's another panel right there.
Right.
So let's give him a hand, y'all. About 7 minutes.
No, actually, we got a little bit more time, but I'm going to just bring a mic down.
Okay.
Because we are recording this for posterity. We want to get your voice on this, so if anybody has a question, I can bring the mic. I play Oprah.
Okay.
I'll bring the mic.
Raise your hand and say hello.
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 My name is Eric Coleman, and Ms. Branch, Dr. Branch. I can just first say it's just such a pleasure. I've been trying to get this gentleman for years to tell that story of meeting Canada Lee and all of these stories. But you and I were at a gathering not too long ago, and I mentioned the fact that you had met Canada that way, and he had gotten you started in the theater, and then you left me with a kind of cryptic remark. You didn't know if that was the best thing that happened, the fact that he steered you toward going further in the theater. Can you explain what you meant by that?
Well, it's something, I'm sorry, it's something that I have from time to time, thought about including in a possible autobiography. But I have since concluded that I'm not going to do that. So as a result, I had to tell you that that in effect this was something which I didn't want to get into at that time.
When you heard and said that we are normal people, you are such a great storyteller. Are you working on a little autobiography a little bit more? Because it's a wonderful story that you tell.
Well, as I said, I had published two anthologies that you may be aware of, and the second anthology was published by the University of Indiana Press. I contacted them some years ago about the possibility of an anthology of plays of mine, of writings of mine, not just plays, screenplays, television pieces, etc. The reaction was slow, but eventually they said yes. However, with the advent of the internet since the last anthology, things have changed in terms of how you had to proceed to get something published. You had to, in effect, do all of the work yourself and hand them a completed CD or whatever it is, CD-ROM or whatever it is, before they would even sign a contract. Well, very frankly, that discouraged me concerning that, and I said, hell with it. So I am not doing an autobiography at this point.